Hey everybody, welcome to another video from Vibe Media, where we help your brand build a influencer level online presence using filmmaking tools and tips to tell your story. I'm Rich Wilson, founder and film director of Vibe Media, and we have yet another episode of our video podcast Vibe Check for you today. In this episode, we discuss filmmaking in 2020. Wow, what a year it's been. We discuss how the events of the year have affected not only just our business, but the entertainment industry as a whole. We also talk about what's being done to adapt to the changes and what is now different in terms of filming, editing, collaboration, and travel. Hold up, time out. Before you get into the episode, just want to let you know that we did have some issue with one of the microphone cables that Forrest is not really heard. We had to use the scratch audio on one of the cameras in order to pick him up. So if the audio sounds a little finicky and not seamless like Dana or myself, that's the reason why. So now you can get back to what I was saying earlier. We get into that and much more. So without further ado, on with the episode! Hey everybody, welcome back to Vibe Check. I'm Rich Wilson, founder and director at Vibe Media. I'm here with my co-hosts, also with Vibe Media. I've got Forrest, our DP, cinematographer extraordinaire, and Dana.
Hi.
Hey, Dana. She's our producer and customer relations here at Vibe Media. And we are talking today in this episode, 2020 and filmmaking.
What happened?
Right?
What went wrong? Everything went wrong when people started making brooms stand up on their own.
Yeah, I think that started it.
I think it did. And you know what? I totally did that too.
It's all Harry Potter.
This is your fault.
Yeah, it's an interesting time in the world. I'm sure everybody's been dealing with it in their own different way this year. Different industries are affected differently. Some of us have been hit double whammy. Some of us are just, even just in general, the film. For this specific podcast, we're going to talk about how it's affected the film industry and what we can maybe see for future trends and
what steps are being taken right now, because we are about 7-8 months into this for 2020, and there was a time there where like nothing was happening because it just stopped.
No movie trailers, no nothing. I remember not seeing a movie trailer on TV for
Right.
4 or 5 months here.
And a lot of movies being postponed. Mulan was one of them. Black Widow. That's just on the Disney side. But man, there's so many other movies that just everything just came to a complete halt.
Oh yeah, and AMC's fight with Universal about not wanting to show their films anymore because they did a VOD release. There's a lot going on.
A lot changing. So we'll dive into each one of those kind of a little deeper here. So I don't know where we want to really start.
Well, I would start with us, because here at Vibe, very similar to a lot of other young filmmakers, this was honestly devastating to happen. Because here we are, we do a lot of corporate events, we do a lot of corporate videos, we help brands with their online presence. And now nobody is really doing quite anything, because their industries, their brands, their businesses have to deal with this as well. And marketing, and especially online marketing,
Not their priority.
is not their priority, right? So we've had to go and try to be creative in this. We struggled for quite a bit for a couple months there. There were things here and there. A lot of them are just, most of the time it's just been editing jobs, not necessarily going out and filming anything anymore. But even other industries, Dana and I actually work part-time for a performing arts center here in Arizona, a local one. And same thing there. The day that I can remember, we spent 7 hours setting up for a concert, live concert. We were supposed to have 500 people, 600 people coming to this venue, and the artist came in and said, "We're canceling the show." And that was around the time when March Madness was getting canceled, and all these other sporting events getting canceled, and then everything stopped. And it was a struggle to, like, what do we do? There's nothing to do. And, well, at least there we've adapted.
Oh yeah,
you know, and a lot of industries have had to adapt. At least in our case, we went from an in-person, concert venue or rental venue to now we're doing live streams.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's changed. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have kind of a day job that's still remained kind of steady on that. I'm still kind of working, doing film as much as possible. Mm-hmm. That did take a pause for quite a while because we had all these big events planned. Mm-hmm. I do bartending as well on the side for weddings and events, and as soon as wedding events were gone, that was all out the window. So I have still not gone back to really having anything steady on that side. It's been a change for everybody. It's been a little bit of a struggle, not only financially as our company was growing too. It was one of those, we had a game plan that had to completely revamp, but also mentally. I think everybody's in a different space mentally, and it's hard to remind yourself that you're in this job for the passion of it, for the love of it. When you're like, I also want to make money. I need to survive. Like. That fight or flight comes in and you lose track of.
And it's a huge struggle. Yeah. It's a huge struggle, especially for a small filmmaking companies, young filmmakers who, like Dana, you quit school to go into this, and then boom, hello, 2020 happened.
Honestly, I think I got kind of lucky with that because I had no experience previous. I had no real taught ways or any specific method to how I ran things or how I wanted to do things. And I think coming into this, it's like, okay, I can start fresh with everyone else and learn with everyone else and kind of at least have some fair ground and know what I'm doing when it comes to like the live streaming stuff. I never would have gotten into that if it wasn't because of this.
I agree.
But that's just one personal case. That's not how it is for everyone. I got really lucky in this situation.
Absolutely. A lot of people have had to adapt going back into live streaming. Live streaming has just gone so skyrocketed. Even look at businesses. Everybody's on virtual calls now. No matter what platform that they're using, that is now a daily thing. Instead of having phone calls or in-person meetings, you're going on a video call.
Yeah, and you don't have to wear pants to it either.
The benefits of it.
Right. You gotta look at the pros and the cons to the situation.
I know there were a few calls that I was on that some people were like, "This is the first time I've actually worn a shirt and tie in like the last 4 months."
Right.
Just like
filming different kind of movies on Zoom nowadays. It's been really interesting. It's as somebody who's worked on a couple of film sets and things in the past as well, it's been interesting to see the news reports of all these shows that are mid-production being canceled, that are not only just being paused but like canceled altogether. Like there are shows that have literally
Netflix just swept through some of their big shows and people were like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy the way that it is. I was talking to you guys a little earlier on this too. I kind of harken it back to when we went through the writer's strike. Some people are old enough to remember the writer's strike.
2008.
Some of us were 10.
Some of us were young, but some of us were around when you realized that shows were running out of ideas or didn't have writers, so they would put together these last minute things in different ways, and the quality of things went down, or the consistency of things went down. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, we're going through that same thing again, where because productions have had to halt or had to change the way that they operate, it's going to cause another lapse of time where media itself is going to change, maybe for the better this time, because maybe we're more technologically prepared for it.
Oh yeah.
But just in general, it's going to have a different feel for a little while for everybody.
Yeah, and it actually brings up a good, interesting point that as the industry is starting to come back in a few different ways, not to where it was, how's that going to look moving forward? Because we already had a lot of things in the can, right? A lot of things were already filmed, but now, during like March to like whenever to like March to February, they're usually filming the next season.
Yeah, they're going through their backlog right now. It's a big thing.
But there's no season now, you know? Like
Yeah.
all these shows saying like, "Oh yeah, the new season comes out." Like, great, but it's going to only be like probably 5 episodes.
Well, there's, good examples. Walking Dead. Walking Dead was, even in post-production on one of their episodes, they couldn't finish it for the season. So they had to make an announcement that they were going to release it later to finish the season, and there's still going to be some weird things on that. I do watch some reality shows, some of the better ones. Big Brother, Amazing Race, not some of the trashy ones. But
Love Island.
yeah, none of those. But Amazing Race is a good example. I know they just announced for the new season like some of the cast, but I think for a while, because it's a show that's based on travel in the world, that they literally had to stop mid-production.
Yeah.
They
Right.
And it's not even that big of a production. It's 20 something days, but midway through the season they had to stop and completely start over. Big Brother in Canada had a controversy because they were mid-season when this all happened, and they didn't tell the contestants initially because part of that show is not knowing what's going on with the outside world. They stopped having an audience in place, obviously, for safety precautions, but then as people started becoming outraged that they weren't telling them what was going on, they got such a backlash that the show just ended. They don't have a winner for that season. They didn't do anything. They just stopped it. So, unfortunate, because those people who work on these, I feel bad for all of us crew members. I feel bad for the people who wanted to be on that show. I personally want to still be on the American version of Big Brother. They're doing a weird season this year with everything, but it's just changing. It's changing a lot. That backlog is being eaten up. We're not able to kind of still build that backlog, and I think it's going to get to a point where we're going to have a lot of reruns, a lot of syndication for a good 6 to 8 months, which we're already kind of doing now.
Or you guys just got to get into anime because nothing's happened there. We're still on track, so...
Well, they can do that when they're own.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Well, there's other, like we said, some parts of the industry is starting to come back and they are adapting. I was recently reading the September issue of American Cinematographer, and it talked about, one of the articles is an industry adapts. And it talks about all facets of filmmaking. It talks about some filmmaking companies like us, where they've had to adapt making like virtual or like remote production kits where you send a camera, a simple microphone, a light to a client. You get on a video call with them. There are ways to, if you have the right camera, there are ways that you could remotely control the camera so the client doesn't have to do it because, cameras are big and scary. If you look at it, sometimes
They're not that big.
they're really not. But if you look at something, it can be very intimidating because there's a lot of buttons on it. And they're like, what does it do? Well, the big red one is record. That's about all a lot of people know. And we've even tried to dabble in remote kits and look in the logistics of that. And there are many production companies out there who've made that successful. But even like I was reading the Apple TV Plus streaming series Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet, filming that during quarantine because they had to stop production. But, with the contract with Apple, they need a new season. How are they going to do that with everybody in quarantine? Well, what they did, the production company did, they got the new iPhone 11 Plus Maxes, sent them to everybody, and they basically filmed everything on a phone with some great filmmaking apps, and also over again, video calls. Some of the apps that they let's see here, they used iPhone 11 Pros, a Shure MV88 microphone, a Quasar Science LED tube, furniture pads, and a roll of blue painter's tape, and that was it. That's all that they sent everybody, and they just set it up, and they got on a virtual production video call where the director, the DP, maybe a couple of the other crew members were on, and they were controlling everything virtually.
Well, and Dana, you were talking earlier, you said there was some sort of movie that was entirely filmed on a Zoom call?
Yeah, so Shudder actually released a movie called The Host, and it's filmed entirely the length of like a trial Zoom call, so it ends at exactly 55 minutes. And it is actually very well done. Wow. They have people leave the conversation, come right back, and they play around with like the filters that are included in the Zoom call, and they just it's a very basic ghost story, but they're able to implicate it into a different sort of format with this Zoom call, so you get a little bit of more of like a modern scare with it. And you're looking in the background like, is that just like the computer? Is that the filter? Or is that the demon they just unleashed?
Interesting, because I've seen a lot of the screenplay readings too. A lot of these people are getting together for reunions on shows and doing that all via Zoom, just to bring some entertainment to people, knowing that everybody's kind of in a weird mental spot. But you're seeing, I watched like a Scott Pilgrim versus the World reunion, and they literally went through the entire script and just reread it, and it was interesting. It was funny. It was cool to see what they did. They all had like props that they made for the thing. So I think it's cool the way that people are adapting to it. Obviously, I don't know if it's a sustainable method. I honestly don't think anything can really replace the quality of an actual film or the complexity of something like that.
Well, and in the industry, some parts of the industry are actually starting to go back to in-person work, but it's a lot different. Whereas you've got filmmaking, where you've got filming a movie, right, where you've got hundreds of people on set, you've got all of the cast and crew there. Now it's completely different. You've cut that crew by 2/3, and everything is socially distanced. Everybody's got to wear masks. The only people who are not wearing masks are the actors, but they only take their masks off if they're actually going to roll action.
Yeah. Well, in the way that they're shooting things, because they're still doing social distance, so camera angles are different now. You got, again, smaller crew size, as you were mentioning before. It's the logistics of it all, because you have to quarantine people for 14 days or maybe longer, depending on if it's a different country, different state. They all have their own rules. So it's harder now for crew to get crew too, as much as there are some crews that have people, living together in these small spaces. I mean, I've been part of a crew for the Super Bowl that happened out here in Arizona, and they rented out a house for all of the film people, but it was like 20 people in this big house. Couldn't do that nowadays with the quarantine rules and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so now you're thinking you got to each individual person their own room. The logistics cost goes up a little bit, but you're less crew. So it's balancing in weird ways, and it's interesting to see, actors, they're not doing any like intimate scenes anymore. Nobody's kissing each other because of these new rules. Like, cooties, essentially.
Yeah, 2020, the biggest game of cooties that I've ever experienced, right?
Coming back to that. It's so it's been really interesting. It's been interesting to see how we could fit into it, if we want to fit into it, or if we want to still kind of push back to get back to normal.
I think this will really like make or break creators. Like they're not going to have 100 team to rely on to like get the shot that they want. They've got to become more creative. They got to basically go back to when movies were being done in like the 80s with like Videodrome and all that stuff. Like a lot more has to be invested into it now. You can't rely on like CGI or like all of this. I mean, I guess maybe now you can rely more on CGI because you might have to, but I feel like this is really going to show who's got what it takes to make a good film.
Well, it kind of goes back to the roots of like early filmmakers, independent filmmakers, where, we have to be creative, like you said. We have to figure out that creativity because honestly, we can't all afford, sky panels, 20,000 sky panels just to film a scene for Star Wars, or all of the red cameras. No, we've got to get our DSLRs. We've got to get, our simple microphones and
iPhone 11s.
Or iPhone 11s, exactly.
But, the good thing that's coming from that is I think I've always said I love Hollywood films. I love the big industry, but stories and interesting camera work. All of those things I think pop more in independent films. I find more when I'm watching independent films,
Sure.
more creative ways to solutions because they don't have the big budget. So maybe
And they
it's
have to be creative.
yeah, maybe it's a good thing to kind of reinvigorate that creativity and get some new stories, new things out there that has been missing for quite a while.
Not another remake, please, for the love of God. No more remakes.
People don't want to see the same things either. People want to see something new and exciting.
Because now it's not about, okay, we've got 10 movies coming out in January, we've got 12 movies coming out in May. Like, it's not about that anymore. Yeah, it's like, okay, we've got to invest all of our time and effort into this one movie that we can release this year because that's it. That's all we've got.
Mm-hmm.
So I really am excited to see what will come out of this creative-wise, because we've already seen, like, the host with the Zoom call. We've already seen stuff from, like, Unfriended 1 and 2. I mean, that movie's got a sequel to it because it was just so cool and so new. I mean, I'm excited to see what really comes out of this.
Fingers crossed it's not writer's strike quality.
Please.
Yeah. Some of my shows suffered during that writer's strike. So.
Right.
You know, I think it's very interesting because it is this year has brought us back to that foundation to build it stronger, right? You know, to reference Monty Python, you know, building, you know, the swamp castle 4 times, just but it was strong, you know, but the 4th time, you know, it was strong, right? And then just also like Forrest, like you talked about earlier, we are able to adapt better this time around as opposed to 2008 because of the technology. Look at the incredible technology that we do have. We're able to film things on video calls off of our laptops, off of our phones. Look at what they did with, like, when they filmed The Mandalorian. They have that LED volume. Green screen is non-existent. They don't have to go to locations now because they could just put it on that LED volume. Mm-hmm. Incredible technology to be able to still do that, as well as if they had to go, you know, have a 300-person crew filming Lord of the Rings in New Zealand.
That's a budget that
Yeah.
wouldn't see anytime soon.
It's an ungodly budget, and it's a
Obviously.
country we will not have any American filmmaker in anytime soon, I'm sure of
No,
it.
definitely not.
That's the other thing
Unfortunately.
too, I think, though, that's going to change a lot is, you know, we're so used to having access to go film around the world, and not necessarily just, you know, other countries maybe stigma with America, whatever that happens to be, but just in general, travel is not the same as it used to be. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more use of American landscapes. I think that may be a good thing for a lot of individual states. I know Georgia has a lot of filming in there. We had it for a while.
Maybe
and then
it'll
it
be
left,
time to
so
bring
maybe
it
it'll
back.
come back.
Yeah,
Who
maybe
knows?
old Hollywood will return back in Sedona.
I know a lot of people are moving from California in general, just businesses, because it's getting too expensive out there. So if they think about other places that have good landscape, good, you know, benefits for filming there, and it's
Right.
something that's local as far as the country goes, it may be a good industry boost for everything.
And it does seem like the Hollywood is thinking now more of what we've been thinking, the independent filmmaker thinking. You know, Dana, you hit it right on the head. That creativity is coming back into the industry. That, you know, it's debatable whether it was lost or not, but, you know, just that creative thinking of, okay, we can't do everything that we used to do 12 months ago. How are we going to be able to do it now, but still have the same qualities, the same, you know, just, you
Reception.
know, reception.
Yeah, and
exactly.
I think now, for me personally, for a really long time, I felt like movies were just big cash cows. They were just making movies to put out in the box office and, you know, get money back from it. I don't think there was anything ever sustainable or, you know, actually good, other than like maybe a few. And I think now this is really going to twist production studios' arms to be like, hey, you don't have the money and you don't have the resources to do that anymore. It's time to actually give people who have these creative ideas and don't want to just reuse the same plot and, you know, like, yeah, give other people a chance to get into this industry and show a bigger audience what it's like. I mean, I don't know how many people would have seen half the movies I've seen if it wasn't for what's going on. I have friends texting me all the time like, hey, what can I watch? Yeah, like new directors, new writers, new actors too. Like, I think this is really just going to open up a whole new world of things.
And it's going to come back stronger. It's going to come back more creative. And so what do you see, what's coming? What do you see what's coming? And here's the thing. It's going to take a while to get back to, I guess, pre-COVID, ways.
Are things even going to go back to normal, or are they just going to kind of adapt from this and find an in-between from the old and this now? Like, no one really knows, like,
nobody knows. Like, honestly, you could be listening to this podcast 3 or 4 months from now, and it would be totally obsolete because everything has changed again. This is just what we have seen so far, here in October.
Now's the time, I would say, to anybody that's thinking about getting into the industry
Now's the time.
Is to do it. You're starting on a ground level again. You don't really get the chance to jump into this Hollywood system that's been established for ever.
You don't need connections anymore.
What?
You still need connections, but you don't need, like, for Hollywood. For Hollywood movies, you don't need, like, oh, I know this person, so I can, do this and this and this.
But we have, it's like we were on the same playing field now. It's not unattainable anymore.
Well, and people now more than ever want that collaborative effort because, with us all being so separate for so long, it's nice to get together and share ideas and brainstorm on things and get excited about getting people together again and doing something that's new and interesting because we've been so just the same for 8 months now, 9 months. It doesn't seem like a long time in the big scheme of things for Hollywood because, again, they've been around forever. But, when you think about any industry, anything that you're coming out, new technologies, it reinvigorates and re-excites people.
Yeah.
So
I think it's going to go more of, like, how A24 does its movies. I'm not really sure what their crew team looks like, but it seems like they're very small, established kind of films. There's not a lot of characters in the movies. It's always kind of centered around 1, 2, maybe 3. I feel like films are really going to start moving towards that direction, and I love that because I love A24 movies. There's so many different types of genres within that. So I'm really excited to see what people create out of this, honestly. I think it's going to be super interesting. A lot of things are probably going to be misses, but I feel like the things that are going to be hits are going to be massive hits, and they're going to be cemented in history because they came out in the midst of what's happening in the world.
And honestly, the creativity, we keep going back to creativity because it is so important. The creativity is boundless, and you're only limited by your own creativity. If you can't think of a creative way of doing something, one, you will. Keep at it. You will. Just start. Just like what we're doing with this podcast, just like what we're doing with our channels. We're trying to be as creative as we can because, well, we need to.
Well, it's given people more time at home to think about these ideas that maybe they didn't get to flesh out before. Maybe it was a passing idea. People have those $1 million ideas every day, and you're like, oh, that's interesting, and then you kind of move on. But when you have nothing to do, maybe you do spend some time writing out that script that you thought about a long time ago, or you're thinking about how I can get some people together, and you're starting to communicate with people you haven't talked with in a while to say, hey, do you want to maybe get together, or how can we get this going? So, there's a chance. I know I personally had some ideas that I've talked to you guys about doing, and it's something that, now more than ever is the time to really jump on it.
It is. And if you're listening and you've got ideas, write them down and then attack them. Now is the time to just attack them and do something new. It's the greatest experience that you have. Like, it's the greatest opportunity that 2020 has given us. Yes, a lot of stuff sucks about 2020, but it's given us the opportunity to be creative, to come out stronger, and to just really attack our ideas.
And as much as you want to work on that backlog of video games that you've never played.
Which I do.
Which I'm doing right now. I'm doing it right now myself, but I'm also taking more time to do my creative things. So it's finding that balance. If you have more time nowadays, yes, keep your mental sanity, do something that's enjoyable, but also work on something that you haven't had the chance to before.
Well, great. I think on that note, next week is Halloween, and we're getting ready for that. And for our Halloween episode, we are going to do a movie review and the movie challenge review from Dana, which was Parasite. And I don't know if you've seen it yet or not, Forrest. I'm going to watch it with my wife probably tomorrow, so I'm pretty excited
I'm excited
about next week's episode.
I have not seen it yet, but it is on my list. I'm going to be watching it. I think later on this week I have a buddy coming over that we're gonna watch it together. So.
I'm gonna rewatch it too, just because I love it so much. I've already seen it 3 times, so.
Everybody come back next week. We'll kind of do a breakdown.
Yeah, make sure you watch Parasite too, and we'd love to hear what your thoughts are for next week's episode. And with that, thanks for listening to Vibe Check, and keep vibing.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you liked the podcast, be sure to follow us. Hit that like button and subscribe to keep up to date when we drop the latest episodes. Also, let us know how we are doing by commenting below and answering this question. How has 2020 affected your filmmaking and your plans to expand your brand? We want to know. Comment below. Go ahead, comment. 2020 has been many things, but it shouldn't let us stop creating and expanding our brand. So go out there and tell your story.